Imagine standing on the edge of a river somewhere in Eurasia around 50,000 years ago. A small group of Homo sapiens has finally stopped after hours of walking. One person kneels beside the water, but nobody drinks. Instead, they watch the current, inspect the banks, scan the footprints pressed into the mud, and only then decide whether it's safe to stay. Archaeological evidence and modern studies of hunter-gatherer societies suggest that simple choices like this could determine who survived long enough to see another season. Yet if someone from the 21st century suddenly appeared beside them, carrying nothing but modern habits, their chances would collapse astonishingly fast. Why would everyday routines that feel completely normal today become deadly in the Ice Age? That's exactly what we're going to find out. And if you enjoy evidence-based stories about history and science, consider subscribing. It helps the channel continue making videos grounded in real research instead of myths. Now, let's count down the 7 modern habits that would quietly put your life at risk 50,000 years ago. 7. Sleeping through the entire night. For most people today, sleeping 8 uninterrupted hours sounds like the definition of healthy living. 50,000 years ago, it could become a dangerous luxury. Our ancestors didn't sleep behind locked doors, insulated walls, or security systems. They shared landscapes with cave lions, wolves, hyenas, leopards in some regions, and occasionally other human groups competing for the same resources. Archaeological sites across Europe and Asia preserve evidence that these predators regularly occupied many of the same caves used by humans, sometimes at different times, sometimes possibly in conflict. This doesn't mean people spent every night terrified or constantly fighting predators. Quite the opposite. Evidence from ethnographic studies of modern hunter-gatherers suggests they developed remarkably effective strategies for reducing risk. A famous study led by anthropologist David Sampson examined sleep patterns among the Hadza of Tanzania, the San of southern Africa, and the Tsimane of Bolivia. One surprising finding was that adults rarely slept all at once. Different people naturally woke up throughout the night because of age differences, biological rhythms, or simple chance. At almost any moment, someone in camp was awake. Researchers called this the poorly sleeping grandmother hypothesis. It sounds humorous, but the idea is serious. Older adults often wake more frequently, and that accidental wakefulness may have helped monitor fires, detect predators, or respond to unexpected dangers without requiring organized night shifts. In other words, what modern medicine often labels as fragmented sleep may have carried survival value in prehistoric environments. The irony is striking. Today, uninterrupted sleep improves health because modern civilization has removed many nighttime threats. Back then, a camp where every adult slept deeply for 8 straight hours would have been unusually vulnerable. And nighttime wasn't the only challenge. Even if you survived until sunrise, another modern habit would begin causing problems almost immediately. 6. Not being able to walk long distances. Imagine your car disappears. So does every road, bicycle, train, elevator, and grocery store. Suddenly, every calorie you eat depends on your legs. Many modern adults struggle to comfortably walk 10 kilometers in a day. For Upper Paleolithic hunter-gatherers, that distance might simply be part of the morning. Researchers studying present-day hunter-gatherer groups consistently document daily travel, ranging from several kilometers to well over 15 kilometers depending on terrain, season, hunting success, and water availability. Some hunting expeditions extend much farther. The archaeological record supports this extraordinary mobility. Stone tools made from volcanic obsidian or high-quality flint have been discovered hundreds of kilometers from their geological sources. In some cases, these materials move through exchange networks. In others, they likely traveled because humans themselves covered enormous distances over generations. The human body reflects this evolutionary history. Compared with other primates, humans possess unusually long legs, large gluteal muscles for stability, spring-like Achilles tendons that store energy while walking and running, and highly developed sweat glands that allow efficient cooling during endurance activity. Anthropologist Daniel Lieberman has argued that many of these features evolved because long-distance movement became central to human survival long before agriculture. Modern fitness culture often celebrates intense exercise performed for 1 hour before returning to a chair. Hunter-gatherers rarely experience that pattern. Physical activity wasn't a workout. It was transportation, food collection, social interaction, exploration, and survival combined into daily life. failed to keep up with your group, and the consequences extended far beyond simple exhaustion. Falling behind could mean losing protection, missing food, or becoming isolated in landscapes where isolation itself carried enormous risks. And speaking of survival, there's another habit almost every modern person takes for granted that becomes surprisingly dangerous the moment thirst takes over. 5. Drinking water. Without thinking about quality, most people today see clear water and assume it's safe. Turn on a faucet, fill a bottle from a filtered dispenser, or drink from a mountain stream while hiking. 50,000 years ago, making that assumption could be fatal. One of the biggest misconceptions about prehistoric life is that every river was pristine simply because there was no industrial pollution. Dangerous microbes don't need factories. They evolve naturally. Bacteria, protozoa, and parasites such as Giardia have existed for millions of years. Water could easily become contaminated by animal feces upstream, decomposing carcasses, or stagnant pools where microorganisms multiplied. Clear water is not necessarily clean water. Hunter-gatherers couldn't identify microbes, but they didn't have to. Like many traditional societies documented by anthropologists, they learned through repeated experience which springs flowed year-round, which pools became risky after heavy animal activity, and which water sources were safest during different seasons. Archaeological evidence also shows that many prehistoric camps were deliberately established close to reliable freshwater, rather than simply the nearest water available. Access to dependable water-shaped migration routes across entire continents. Even so, avoiding contaminated water wasn't always possible. Illnesses causing severe diarrhea or vomiting become far more dangerous without modern medicine because dehydration can develop rapidly, especially when food is already scarce. Ironically, modern people often think survival means finding water first. In reality, finding the right water mattered just as much, but even clean water couldn't solve another problem that most of us would face within days. 4. Not knowing how to recognize wild plants and foods. Walk through almost any forest today, and most people couldn't confidently identify 5 edible plants. That knowledge gap barely matters when supermarkets exist. 50,000 years ago, it could become a death sentence. For decades, prehistoric diets were often portrayed as overwhelmingly focused on meat. Modern archaeology paints a much more complicated picture. Microscopic plant remains trapped in ancient dental calculus, starch grains preserved on stone tools, and residue analysis all show that Homo sapiens regularly consumed a wide variety of plant foods whenever local environments allowed. Tubers, nuts, seeds, berries, fruits, mushrooms, leafy greens, and edible roots all contributed calories, vitamins, and minerals. The challenge wasn't simply finding plants, it was recognizing the right ones. Many edible species have poisonous lookalikes. Some plants are harmless only after cooking. Others change depending on the season. A nutritious root in one region might resemble a toxic species somewhere else. Ethnographic research among modern hunter-gatherers demonstrates that this knowledge is rarely instinctive. Children spend years learning from parents, grandparents, and other experienced members of the group. Plant identification becomes an enormous mental library built through observation and repetition. Researchers studying traditional ecological knowledge often describe this information as one of humanity's oldest technologies. No stone blade or spear matters much if you cannot recognize the landscape that surrounds you. There's another twist. Plants weren't only food. Many served as medicines, adhesives, fibers, dyes, or insect repellents. Missing that knowledge meant losing far more than calories. Which brings us to a habit that's surprisingly common today, refusing to eat something simply because you don't like it. 3. Being extremely picky about food. Modern diets are built around preference. I don't like mushrooms. I only eat chicken. I hate fish. Those choices are possible because supermarkets offer thousands of alternatives every day. Hunter-gatherers rarely enjoyed that luxury. Food availability changed constantly with weather, migration, drought, failed hunts, seasonal plants, and competition from other predators. One week might provide abundant game. The next might depend heavily on roots, shellfish, insects, nuts, or whatever else the environment offered. Stable isotope analysis of prehistoric human skeletons reveals remarkable dietary flexibility across different regions. Some populations relied heavily on large mammals. Others consumed substantial amounts of freshwater fish, marine resources, birds, or diverse plant foods depending on local ecosystems. This flexibility became one of Homo sapiens' greatest evolutionary advantages. Unlike highly specialized predators, humans learn to exploit almost every environment on Earth. Anthropologists often describe humans as dietary generalists. In simple terms, we're biological opportunists. That adaptability helped our species spread from Africa into deserts, forests, mountains, tundra, and eventually nearly every habitable continent. A modern picky eater transported into the Upper Paleolithic would quickly face an uncomfortable reality. Your favorite foods don't exist. Your backup options probably don't either. The calories you reject today could easily become the calories separating survival from starvation. And none of that flexibility would matter if you lacked one skill that transformed the entire human story. In fact, many anthropologists consider it one of the defining technologies of our species. 2. Not knowing how to make fire. Imagine your lighter is gone, no matches, no stove, no electricity. The campfire in front of you burns out overnight. Now what? Many people assume making fire is simply rubbing two sticks together. In reality, producing fire consistently from natural materials is a difficult skill that often takes hours of practice before someone succeeds even once. By 50,000 years ago, Homo sapiens had long mastered the controlled use of fire. Archaeological sites across Africa, Europe, and Asia preserve repeated evidence of hearths containing charcoal, burned bone, heated stone, and ash layers, showing that fire had become an essential part of daily life, rather than an occasional accident. Fire changed almost everything. It made meat and many plant foods easier to digest, reducing the energy required for chewing and digestion. It killed many foodborne pathogens. It provided warmth during ice age climates, extended activity into the night, hardened wooden spear tips, discouraged predators, and became the center of social life where knowledge could be shared across generations. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham has argued that cooking fundamentally altered human evolution by increasing the usable energy extracted from food. While some aspects of this hypothesis remain debated, few researchers dispute that controlled fire dramatically expanded the environments humans could occupy. What's remarkable is that many traditional societies treated fire almost like a living resource. Instead of allowing it to disappear, groups often transported glowing embers between camps inside slow-burning bundles of wood, bark, or fungus. Starting a brand new fire from scratch was possible, but preserving an existing one was usually easier. A modern person dropped into that world might know that friction creates heat. Knowing the principle isn't enough. Without experience, that knowledge is unlikely to keep you warm on a freezing night. But even losing fire wasn't necessarily the fastest way to die, because the greatest threat could begin with something so small that most of us would barely notice it. 1. Ignoring small injuries, a tiny cut on your finger, a scraped knee after slipping on wet ground, a blister from walking all day. Today, most people wash it, cover it with a bandage, and forget about it. 50,000 years ago, that same injury could quietly become the most dangerous thing that happened all year. Long before antibiotics, bacteria were among humanity's most relentless enemies. Once a wound became infected, the body's immune system had to fight alone. Sometimes it succeeded. Sometimes it didn't. Skeletal remains from prehistoric populations reveal evidence of healed fractures, severe injuries, amputations, and even long-term survival after significant trauma. Those discoveries tell us something remarkable. Prehistoric people often cared for injured members of their communities for extended periods, but the archaeological record also preserves countless individuals whose infections likely became fatal. Soft tissue rarely survives for tens of thousands of years, so the exact cause of death is often impossible to determine. Even so, researchers know that infections have shaped human evolution for millions of years. Hunter-gatherers developed practical ways to reduce risk. Cleaning wounds, removing damaged tissue, using certain medicinal plants, or applying naturally antimicrobial substances were all documented among many traditional societies, although practices differed widely between cultures. The crucial difference wasn't that prehistoric humans never got injured, it was that they understood even a minor wound demanded attention. Ironically, modern medicine has made us comfortable ignoring cuts that would have worried our ancestors far more than a charging predator. Now think back to that river at the beginning of this video. Those people weren't being paranoid when they stopped to study the water before drinking. Every decision they made, from where they slept to what they ate to whether they protected a small cut, was part of an invisible survival system built over thousands of generations. None of those habits look dramatic, Most seemed ordinary, yet together they allowed Homo sapiens to survive environments that would overwhelm many of us today. The real lesson isn't that prehistoric life was constant misery, nor that modern life has made us weak. It's that human intelligence has always depended on adaptation. We change our habits to match our environment. Civilization changed the environment so completely that many skills essential for survival quietly disappeared, not because they stopped working, but because we no longer needed them. That raises an interesting question. If you woke up 50,000 years ago with everything you know today, which modern habit do you think would be the hardest to unlearn? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy exploring the science behind humanity's past, subscribe. There are many more stories where archaeology and modern research reveal just how extraordinary ordinary life used to be.